I had the job today, I guess, in terms of setting the context for where we've all been over the last 4 or 5 years. And, I'm the last person to sort of stand up here and say we've all been doing it tough. We all know that. We've just come out of a group training network meeting, and the statistics in some areas certainly don't look pretty. But today I just thought it would be a good point to start with in terms of setting the context, not only from a training perspective, but also from an employer perspective. And then we'll certainly hear more of the views from John Ackland and Megan Lilly as we go through. So in terms of the training context, what's been happening over the last few years, we're certainly going through a period of tremendous change. We've got a demand-driven vet system. I believe we need better information that needs to get to our youth, our parents and employers on the training options. A lot of young people don't understand the idea of a training entitlement, and if they use up that training entitlement, what that means for them in the future. We've got a government fund that continues to be adjusted with budget constraints. A couple of years ago, the government had a massive blowout in the budget, so trying to pull that back in, we can understand that that has pressures from a government and political perspective, but it also has pressures from an operational perspective in trying to run a business. And there's certainly been some issues around the quality of delivery and what actually constitutes issuing a qualification and what do you get paid to issue that qualification. In Victoria, we've also got the traditional TAFE providers. They're evaluating their future directions, and they're certainly entered into a very competitive market. And this may also have a reduced option for a lot of our members in regional areas and a lot of employers and young people in regional areas in terms of what training options are available to them in the future. And we're still in the middle of a state and federal government review. We're continuing to review the system, and that's very frustrating when we're trying to operate in that system. The uncertainty of future budgets and where you're moving and all those sorts of things are really difficult. The current government talked about removing the duplication in the system and streamlining administration and reporting systems, and we'd be all for that. But in terms of exactly what that looks like and what that means in the future, there's still things that we're here to work with. Now, I guess from a training perspective, if you go back 10 years ago, we never really used the word market. And today, everyone talks about the training market, and it's a demand-driven market, and we've had to get our minds around what that actually means. It's very different to what training used to look like 10 or 15 years ago. So that's, in a snapshot, in 30 seconds, what the environment has sort of looked like for a lot of our members from a good training perspective. Also keeping in mind that most of our members are also registered training providers. And then on the other hand, what are the employers having to deal with? We've got over 70% of the skill shortages in our industry are businesses that work with less than 10 employees. So small businesses are propping up all of our skill shortage areas. How do we support them into the future? We've got recent changes to the Fair Work Australia, modern awards. We've got training costs, including travel. We've got increased salaries to new and mature age apprentices, and we've got a competency-based wage progression system, which again, I guess, conflicts with the way that RTOs are speeding up the delivery of training. It's going to have a direct impact on the way that we have to pay our apprentices and trainees moving forward. We're trying to attract and keep a flexible modern workforce. Exactly how do we do that in the vet system with quite a number of layers of regulation and processes in place? And the employers out there have certainly been going through a tough economic condition themselves. We all talk about the GFC back in 2008, 2009, but I think in Victoria and many other places around Australia, that's continued on, and we really haven't seen the employer confidence to return to what it was in the early 2000s. And that's directly impacting on group training commencements and completions in that space. But I would argue that that's probably not been the case for a lot of other training programs. We've certainly seen spikes in training. And if you look at some governments, they're saying we're training more people than ever before. But we've also got youth unemployment at higher levels than ever before in quite a number of pockets. And group training, where you've got a very strong relationship between employment and training, we're seeing our numbers actually decline. So today's all about the debate about where we're going with training, how does that impact on employers, and how does that impact on the wider vet system. I did want to finish off with some statistics, and I'm not expecting you to all read them there, but you have got copies of this booklet on your table. We launched this in late November, the Minister was kind enough to come and present at our end of year conference in July. Today was all about refreshing the arguments in that booklet, and we'll certainly see some more media come out over the coming weeks in terms of our views of how group training can play a bigger role in the vet system, and how we would like to make some recommendations around the government when they're looking at policies and forward thinking in terms of budgets, how we can actually get a closer link between employment outcomes and training outcomes, because ultimately if the goal of training is to improve the economy, surely the ultimate goal for anyone doing training is to get a job in the industry when they finish. So the goal of the document is to sort of talk about that and certainly highlight the value of the things that group training can support. With that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker today. So John Ackland. Most of you in the room would know John. John's been a long-term CEO of a group training company in the Western Districts. Skill Invest, own Workman Limited, Link, Employment and Training and Longarone College. John was in the position since 1986, and I know when John got out of his life membership through the association, we gave him a blow to hang from his car rear vision mirror, because he travels the globe about 5 times a year between 3 activities and 3 locations of his jobs. So please join with me and welcome John to the stage.